that first step is so difficult. What are some of the lessons you guys have learned along the way that you'd be happy to share?
Yeah, I'm happy to kickstart that. I would just say, before taking the left turn just at the stop sign there, just to echo what Rose said, obviously getting out of the building, talking to people was really key, right? And putting time into the community. But I'll also say a lot of our partnerships, cross-promotion opportunities, and influencers out there in the market, people who have anywhere between 5,000 and 150,000 followers, has been really instrumental for us as well. So there's the like of Manflow Yoga, and we work with the guy named Dean Pullman, who has promoted our shorts to his network, and that's been a really great partnership, fruitful for both sides. And there's countless others out there that we're working on. So would just add that. And to your question, now taking the turn, I think anyone who's aspiring to be an entrepreneur or have a side hustle, it's really about taking that first step. Yeah. So establishing yourself, facing fear right in the face, right? So it was that fight or flight moment, So are you going to keep putting it off to next year? Are you going to say, I'll do it tomorrow? And, for both Roe and I, we've dabbled in the past in startup. I was full-time startup, for a travel tech company back in the day. Roe worked in advertising at one point. But, we both realized that in order to actually make it happen, you have to take the leap of faith and you have to start. So you have to start moving. So what are the practical steps there, right? You'll hear it from the likes of Gary Vaynerchuk and others in the industry that you need to really figure out what your passion is first. Right? If you're not passionate about what you're doing, sure, you might build a viable business, but it'll probably crash because you'll crash with it. And then even if it's making good money, the money isn't enough to hold you in most of the time. So for Roe and I, like Roe said, we genuinely want men to live longer lives so that they don't leave their loved ones behind in late 60s, early 70s. There's so much more to life, to watch grandchildren grow up, and also the quality of life. So passion is number one. And I would say number two is having the ability to face failure, right? Like if you are so afraid to fail that you don't attempt, building your own business, something that you're passionate about, starting your own podcast, then what are you living for, right? Just to work at, the 9 to 6 and kind of carry on with your life and have a very, in some ways, simplistic, easygoing path, but it depends what you really care about, So even if you do something on the side as a hobby, just start. Anything you would add, Ro?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of off that last point you said, Evan, of just start, Mark Zuckerberg always says done is better than perfect. It's a quote that he has on the wall at Facebook, and we definitely agree. It's all about getting things done. I mean, I tell Evan all the time, I don't care, if you and I screw something up, I don't care if we make huge mistakes, as long as we get it done and we're making progress, that's the number one thing. Another piece of advice I would say, besides passion, which I think is extremely important, as Evan mentioned, is, make sure that when you ask for advice as a young entrepreneur, you're not asking people who haven't done what you're trying to do. So, you're going to have a lot of voices in your ear when you start as a young entrepreneur. You're going to have your mom, you're going to have your grandma, you're going to have your kids, you're going to have your friends. And frankly, if they haven't started a business before, take what they're saying with a grain of salt. And so that's part of why Evan and I joined EC Accelerate, because they have built, over 300 companies, and they've gone from 0 to 7 and 8 figures in revenue. And so we took the advice of people who've actually been there and done that. And so I think it's really important to, take people's advice, but really look at and listen to who's actually done what you're trying to do. If you're a young entrepreneur and you want to start, the next, the next baseball bat company, go and talk to 100 people that have started a baseball bat company. It's as simple as that.
Swing batter.
So yeah, that's kind of my.
Let's make it personal again. So you spoke, Evan, especially you spoke about failure and not fear failure, and then you spoke about how we're going to make mistakes, Ro. We're going to make mistakes, but as long as we get it done and move forward. Share one. Failure is such a hard word. And share one thing that maybe didn't go the way you wanted to, and then your response and how you dealt with that. Is that okay? Choose one of you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think as a young entrepreneur, you're going to have a finite number of dollars, and you're not really going to know where to invest and where to spend your time. So one thing Evan and I have learned through failure is that oftentimes cheap is expensive. And so when I think about some of the investments we've made where we really try to bootstrap and we potentially not on the product itself, because we would never do that. We've got a premium product, but on things like digital advertising, on things like your online presence. I mean, Evan and I have tried to do, frankly, another piece of advice is don't do everything yourself. I mean, hire people who are actually skilled at what you're trying to do. It doesn't make sense to try to do everything yourselves. But, you know, Evan and I have learned cheap is expensive. So we've had a couple of kind of online projects that we've done for the company where we tried to cheap out and actually create something that was quite low budget, and it ended up costing us quite a lot in the grand scheme of things. So that's just one piece of advice and failure, and that's happened to us a few times.
On the day that you had that realization, you're like, man, because we've done it as well. When we first started Joint Dynamics, we got a friend, more or less, to build our first ever website. Cheap was so expensive. It was crazy how much that cost us. It was the biggest mistake. Yeah. But when you start a company, you think you need to take shortcuts, or you do need to take some shortcuts, but it needs to be measured.
Yeah.
On the day that materialized, you're like, oh man, we're into this now. There's no getting out. We're either going to have to scrap this. What was your response, Evan?
Yeah, that brings it to my personal point around, you know, I wouldn't call it a failure necessarily, but a huge learning from my time working with Roe through BrutalBuddha. So, you know, we're obviously extremely hungry people and we want to see this business take off. So we'll literally work, you know, 365, like 17-hour days, you know, especially on the weekends. And, you know, if I think about what I've learned most, it's the importance of rest and slowing down, because sometimes, you know, cheap is expensive. And sometimes, as my partner Madison will remind me, you have to go slow to go fast sometimes. So when we hit a few brutal brick walls, we took a step back, right? There were a lot of times where we said, oh, we can get, you know, 15,000 more emails by investing 10 grand, right? And it equated to 2,000 emails and they didn't convert into dollars. So it's like, we can't get that money back, right? And we tried to rush things, and we're sometimes in such a go mode that we don't take a second to actually step back and look at the longevity of the business, right? Quote unquote. So, you know, I would say being able to meditate for me personally, and I know for Roe as well, has served us tenfold in our journey, because it allows you to see the big picture, right? Like, you're going to have some minor setbacks, but one thing I've learned is if something's not going to bother you in 2 weeks from today, don't spend the energy kind of dwelling on it. Move on, you know, see the future first. So yeah, we definitely have had our fair share of quote unquote setbacks, but we've overcome them all. And I think, you know, for a lot of people out there, it's also extremely important to find the right partner. So Roe and I clicked. We were best friends from day one. You know, we were friends for a few months even before we decided to start a physical product business together. And Roe and I bounce off of each other's energy, like yin and yang, a lot. So I think that's key when you look to partner with somebody as you scale your business.